Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 117 of the ATL Falcons UK show. It is a Victory Tuesday. As you can see, we're two men down today. So Mark suggested a very, very high-profile guest for us to tag in, and that is, of course, Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons. Aaron, thank you for coming on. It's been a little while. You've been on before, but it's probably been a season or so since we spoke last. Good game for you to jump on board to, so we'll get right into it. How are you feeling about Victory Tuesday?
It's a great feeling. It's a feeling that we haven't had in a long time here in Atlanta. Well, I mean, we won a Monday night game, but it was what was that Raiders game last year or whatever. That didn't feel particularly victorious that following Tuesday, coming off of that game, given all the changes that we're going to occur at the quarterback position in. So it is nice to kind of celebrate a big win, one of the biggest wins the Falcons have had in a very long time, one of the more impressive wins that they've had in a very long time. So it's a good week.
Lovely stuff. Liam, how are you feeling? I know you didn't catch it last night, so you were on the train this morning at probably 6 a.m. watching it.
yeah, something like that. I mean, I managed to avoid the result as well, so I was actually watching it. I was actually watching it sort of live, if you will, on the train, trying not to overreact and cause a scene, but there might have been a few fist pumps along the way. I mean, it was a result that was, like in a way unexpected, but at the same time, I really did believe that we could do it. And we sort of delivered on both sides of the ball. I know we stuttered a little bit in the second half on the offense, but the defense turned up the entire game and delivered, and our key players performing at key times, and that was something we've been lacking sometimes, where our big players can go missing when we need them, and they certainly didn't last night. So it was great to see.
Absolutely. We'll get started on the positives, because there wasn't too many negatives, if any. So I don't want to bring the tone of the show down at any point. So I think it'd be rude not to start with arguably the two main men from last night in Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Historic evening for Bijan. Aaron, how are you feeling about him at the moment? Because I've held my hands up and said I think he's very possibly the best player in the league right now.
Yeah, look, I've always felt great about Bijan. I've said on Locked On Falcons all throughout last year, no notes when it comes to Bijan Robinson. You're doing great. All my criticisms about this team and this offense have to deal with the other 10 guys on the field with you, sharing the field with you. And I think you saw that this past Monday. Again, not to suggest the other 10 guys were messing up, but he clearly is the caliber of player that when he does step on the field, he is potentially one of the best players on the planet, and you got to see that on Monday night. So it's just, to me, Bijan being Bijan, he's been incredible from the jump. I joked in the lead up to that 23 draft that there are two types of people on the planet. There are people that are Bijan fans and all the people that haven't seen him play football yet. And I think, the more people that get exposed to, him playing football become bigger and bigger fans. And so that's a ever expanding fan base of Bijan fans out there that exist on the planet.
It is. I think we're getting to the point now. Of course, you have those few transitional seasons after someone comes out of college football where rival fans don't very often adopt other teams' players. But I think he's undeniable at this point. I know there's a lot of talk about potentially Taylor being better than him and things like that, but I can't buy it. I admit Taylor has the touchdowns at the moment in time this season, and that is a huge part of the game, of course. But I just think fundamentally and physically, Bijan does things that no other player in the league can do at any point, and it's crazy to see.
Yeah, I think, you saw it last year. You saw glimpses of it last year, and you look at some of the numbers, and he had a Christian McCaffrey-esque season last year. But then you had the two seasons that Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley had that kind of overshadowed it. And the question, I think, going into this year was, could Bijan build on it? And I think we all had optimism and hope and confidence that he would be able to build on it. And then I know for me personally, when Caleb McGarry went down during the summer, I was like, ooh, I don't know if the run game is going to be at the level it needs to be in terms of the blocking in order for Bijan to have that type of season, that sort of record-setting season, RB1 type season on the ground. And can he make up for it as a pass catcher? He's more than been a dynamic pass catcher in terms of his explosiveness. You've seen the explosive runs on the ground. And so like the drop off in the blocking has not been as significant as I think many of our more pessimistic expectations were after the Caleb McGarry injury. And then you couple that with that renewed sense that Bijan has in terms of being able to turn those 5-yard gains into 15-yard gains. And as you saw last night, even getting that 81-yard touchdown, the thing that has been solely the one element that has been kind of lacking in Bijan's resume through 2+ years, which is those explosive touchdowns. And he finally sort of broke through. And of course, doing it on the national spotlight, I think, adds just more fuel to that fire.
Yeah, definitely. And he emphasized that in one of his post-game interviews yesterday, that everybody always comes for him because his biggest plays have never been that substantial, really. But I think the touchdown that he scored yesterday, even if he buckled after the 30-yard run when he obviously got hit, it still would have been a sensational run and a sensational play. But he's just got that something that nobody else seems to have at the moment. Liam, have you got anything to add on who is only the GOAT?
No, I mean, obviously pre-season, that was the one thing that I was saying was obviously missing from his sort of resume so far was the explosive plays. Obviously, I was sort of saying like Saquon will have, obviously those productive plays, but he'll always have like 4 or 5, explosive 50, 60 plus yard plays like every season. And Bijan sort of hadn't delivered on any of those up until this point. And obviously this season he's had multiple long ones. Obviously, I think did they say that was the longest rush in Falcons history last night? Was it or something like that? 81 yards or something? And I'm sure I heard the commentary say something like that. Like now he's adding those to his game. It's obviously he's going to get even more eyes on him, and I think he seems to be one of those players who sort of thrives under the spotlight a little bit. The more sorts of people talk about him, it doesn't seem to affect him in a negative way. He just seems to come out and perform sort of even better. Yeah. He's almost sort of like more glossy in the way that he performs. He's like, some of the jukes that he performs, he's almost like slow motion where you can sort of see it in the way he's doing it. He knows like the cameras are on him. You go see like winking while he's doing it. He's got that much time to do it. He just knows that was a good one. And I think defenders are just having nightmares. We were saying about the sort of the Bills tackling struggles prior to this game. They've been one of the worst tackling teams so far this season, especially in sort of the one-on-one tackles. And there's one player you don't want to go up against when you're struggling to tackle effectively, and that's Bijan right now, because he knows how to make a man miss, and he duly delivered.
He definitely does. We've just got Jackson in the comments, slightly fact-checking you and correcting you there.
Yeah, I think it was on a commentary. He might have said second. I wasn't sure. I heard longest running Falcons history, and I thought it was something along those lines. Yeah.
We could talk about Bijan all night, but I think it would be awfully rude not to mention his partner in crime in Tyler Algier, because his touchdown yesterday was a real power back touchdown. We speak about the 1-2 punch combo quite a lot on the show, Aaron, but how do you feel about them two together, and especially Tyler specifically, in terms of how he affects our play?
Well, going back to what I said earlier, that no notes comment, it was also
across the
Algier was under that umbrella too. It's like, what you do, they don't do the same thing in terms of how they run, but what they do, what they're asked to do, they both do it at a very high level. And Tyler Algier, one of the best, if not the best, number 2 running backs in the NFL, being that sort of power complement to Bijan. And it was funny to me late in the game when with Dan Orlovsky on the ESPN commentary, and he was like, at some point in the fourth quarter, he's like, we got to get the ball to Bijan Robinson. I'm like, all right, Dan, this is Tyler Tack. This is the time where Tyler Algier, you hand the ball off to Tyler Algier, and you just let that sledgehammer just go to work at the end of the salt that game away. And that's been sort of the through line for this Falcon team. And then you talk about that opening touchdown where you just give him that space. And then when he can kind of build up that steam to go downhill, I forgot who it was that he trucked at the goal line. Maybe it was Shaq Thompson or Terrell Bernard or whoever it was, Taylor Rapp maybe. somebody,
It was the same result. It was going to be the same result. Yeah.
I couldn't read the name on the uniform because he was, on his back. So like that's just those types of angry runs that Tyler Algier has just been known for, and it's always a beauty to see when both of those guys can get going. We haven't quite had the sort of consistency from Tyler Algier that we saw at the peak last year. You're consistently getting Bijan playing at a high level, and then you have some of these games where it's like Algier's been an afterthought. But this offense, I feel like, is always at its best when both of those guys are getting going and sort of form that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to add anything on that, Liam? I know it's your.
I did. Really enjoyed that play. I almost felt like it was one of those plays where I feel like he could have probably gone left and around the final defender, and he decided, no, I'm going through this guy. he specifically picked him out. He was like, no, I'm going straight. I'm going straight through you, and you don't want to be coming up against somebody like him on the goal line. There's nobody going to stop him. So I think when he's used effectively at the right times. Like I know a lot of people say just run Bijan, just keep doing it because of obviously how special he is of a player. But when Bijan's sort of like draining defenders a little bit, the last thing you want to see coming on the field is somebody like Algier, where you're going to have to put some effort in to bring him down, and you bring him on for however many plays in a row. He'll just sap the defense, and then who comes on? Bijan comes back on. And these guys are exhausted, and it's just an effective way of playing, and a lot of the best teams in the league tend to be the ones that have got two very capable running backs in rotation, and I think with our MO has been to rush the ball for a number of years now, so it's great to see that we're continuing doing that, and I think we're doing it at probably the highest level we've done it in a long while, probably since the pick your poison days of Freeman and Coleman. Yeah,
absolutely. Just going to quickly jump into the comments before we move on. We've got regular watcher, Electrify. Bijan and Algier as a duo work so perfectly. Those tricky little runs from Bijan and Tyler just bulldozing his way through. When they're both on top form, it's impossible or unstoppable, actually. But I was going to say impossible to stop, so I was jumping ahead there. And then we've got Zen jumping in, saying the best football player in the world right now is on our team. How awesome is that? I mean, I echo that shout. Of course, it's up for debate. I've seen loads of names flying about, but on pure talent alone, I'm sticking with Bijan for the time being. And of course, the bias in me being a Falcon. I think it was a really interesting game based on the fact that we did have quite a few notable inactives on the offensive side. Of course, we were missing Mooney and Ray, which kind of put the impetus onto Bijan and Pitts and London. How are you feeling, Aaron, about Penix at this point and his interaction with those sort of players? Because in the first half, he really did target London. Like he had more targets in that first half than anybody had collectively. So how are you thinking he's building that chemistry?
Well, I know there was a lot of talk during the summer about the connection between Penix and Drake London. You didn't quite see that manifest in the first 3 games, but you've really seen it take off these last couple of games. And I think with Mooney out of the lineup, that was, to me, going to be the big catalyst to kind of funnel the offense through Drake London, because, they were such a good 1-2 punch last year that they were arguably, if not number one, they were certainly in the top 3 in terms of wide receiver duos. And you haven't, the first couple of games, you didn't really see those guys really sort of pick up where they left off last year with Penix at the helm, in part due to injuries to both of those guys. You've seen Drake get healthy and start to come on strong these last couple of games. You haven't quite seen that from Mooney. We'll see if that continues to be an issue for Mooney moving forward. But I certainly think, the question was going to be going into this game in particular, because you're down Mooney, you're down Ray McLeod. Can you sort of funnel the offense through Drake London and Kyle Pitts? And Kyle Pitts wasn't really that big a factor in this game as a pass catcher, and because he didn't need to be, as you said, like the Falcons were just fine. Hey, we know where the football's going. It's going to Drake London, and the Bills were virtually powerless to stop it. And I think that, to me, is a testament to Drake London sort of living up to the hype that we all have seen the flashes of sort of, being that true number one wide receiver where you can just basically like, okay, I am the passing offense that, when I go out there, as we're talking about the running game, you're kind of powerless to stop me. And it was really nice to sort of see that manifest in this game because you kind of needed that given the injuries at the other wide receiver position. No offense to the Casey Washingtons and the David Sills of the world, but the more they're getting thrown the football, to me, the less effective the Falcons offense tends to be at this point in time. So the fact that they were able to generate as many explosives through Drake London as they were able to, I think he had 4 20-plus yard plays in this game, to me was huge for this passing attack. So I loved everything I saw from the passing attack, particularly in the first half. And I feel like so far with Penix and that rapport with Drake London, I was telling somebody earlier today that we're seeing hopefully what is the beginning of a very strong connection of 9 to 5, similar to what we saw when it was, Matt Ryan throwing to Julio Jones and to Roddy White and, going deeper into the Falcons lore, for those younger like Chris Chandler to Terrence Mathis and all those various things from the past when you have had a really good quarterback in a sort of elite wide receiver in this offense. And so I like what I'm seeing. I think, this is only the beginning of that process, but it does feel like, the sky's the limit in terms of what those two guys can do.
Yeah, 100%. Liam, just on the receiver front, of course, Aaron just referenced Sills then a little bit. I know you thought he did his job in one way. That was not the receiving part of the game. It was the blocking part of the game. Do you have any concerns about the receiving depth at the moment with the injuries, or you think we're just plugging it fine just for now?
I mean, when the injuries are there, and obviously if Mooney hasn't really obviously been injured, so it's essentially the entire season. I know he has played a little bit. He didn't look fit at all, really, and didn't really look ready to go when he was playing. So there are obviously some concerns there. Obviously, Pitts has been sort of a step up from previous seasons so far. He wasn't that effective in this game, but he has been a better receiving option than he was sort of last season. I guess there are some concerns if a sort of an elite defensive back is put on Drake London that maybe can nullify him a little bit, like where sort of else would we go with the ball. Obviously, using Bijan in that role has been very effective as a pass catcher, so that's a really good option for us. But I think the plays that we're designing for London are really suiting him at the moment. I think in the past we've sort of used him sort of against his strengths, really, like it was trying to get him a little bit too far downfield or trying to sort of stretch him a little bit. Whereas what we're doing a lot of now is sort of getting him in that middle of the field, getting his back turned and just bodying out the defender. And I think that's where Penix is now seeing the trust in him. If he knows he can, as long as he throws in the range of Drake London, like it's very difficult for a back to get around somebody of his size and physicality. And I think that's where you can see he's just on the goal line ones that we've had recently. You just get London, in front of a defender and just throw the ball when he's going to get it like pretty much every time. And it will be difficult for teams to stop him. But I am a little bit concerned about if there is games where he is stopped. Like what is our backup plan in the passing game? In games where we're behind, for example, that's where I feel a little bit more concerned. Where we maybe have to go away from the run game a little bit more. Have we got enough options to beat teams? Casey Washington has done a solid job when needed. Like he's not. Hopefully Mooney can come back. Ray's obviously shown that he has got ability as being a sort of a third receiver for us. So we have got the personnel to do it, but when we've got injuries and we're a couple of players down, that will be my main concern. Is can teams take London out of the game? If yes, where do we go?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to quickly jump into the comments again. This one's for you, Aaron, so it must be a regular. On the back of the Bijan comment about him being the best player in the league and playing for us, Jackson says, the best player we have is on the practice squad, Easton Stick. Go on, you may as well elaborate. I watch your show anyway, but for those that may not, which is rare, go on.
Yeah, the Eastern stick shtick that we had during the preseason, probably ran its course during the preseason, but yeah, it was kind of he played really well in that first preseason game, and it was to me a revelation because if you've been a Falcon fan for any amount of time and you pay attention to the preseason games, they don't usually get good quarterback play in the preseason. It leads to the preseason games are already dull as heck.
Yeah.
And so when your quarterback is not able to complete passes, it's a real slog to get through. And especially with the Falcons and Raheem Morris's refusal to play the starters, so you're getting, the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the preseason games. So it's like, oh, Easton Stick playing well for this one game. This is incredible. I'm going to hype everything up. And then, the bottom immediately fell out.
Yeah,
but
pretty sharp.
We will always have that first preseason game of Easton Stick playing high-level football. And so there will always be a place in my heart for Easton Stick because we had 1 week of just like, hey, we can talk about good quarterback play on a podcast during the preseason because it is so rare to see in Atlanta.
It's one for the history books, without a doubt. He's not going to forget it anytime soon, is he? Just before we move on, I mean, we could cover the O-line a little bit if anyone's got any specific comments, but I'll just jump into the comment really quick. Ben, regular viewer, evening guys, the two best Falcons podcasts linking up. Thank you very much. We will take that. And I will hands up and say we are the second best after credit where credit is due. But yeah, just to top off discussing the offense a little bit, the O-line was something that we had some concerns about with McGarry going down early in the season. Of course, Ryan playing at center and things like that. How are you feeling, Aaron, about how that's holding up so far? Of course, yesterday was a pretty good reflection of that, but we've had some off games as well.
Yeah, I think the offensive line has held up as well as you could possibly have hoped. Elijah Wilkinson, there was a lot of concern about him being a disaster, particularly in pass protection. And the question was going to be how big of a drop-off there was going to be from Caleb McGarry to him as a run blocker. There has been a drop-off, but it hasn't been sort of the massive sort of where the Falcons, run game ceases to function because they can't run to the right side, which was the strength of their run game with Chris Lindstrom and McGarry on that side. And it's still been solid with, Lindstrom playing really well and Wilkinson holding his own as well in the run game. The main concern last night was, the injury to Jake Matthews that sort of knocked him out in the second half. And that kind of changed how the Falcons could play and how they could execute offensively, both in the run game and pass protection. And the update that we got on Tuesday after the game is that it doesn't sound like that's going to be a long-term injury. So that hopefully is a bullet that the Falcons dodge because, you already lose, as you mentioned, some of these injuries. Like you couldn't afford to – you basically Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom are like you can't afford those guys to miss really any time because that's where potentially the bottom does fall out and all your worst feelers come to reality. But the thing that kind of stood out to me rewatching the game, I haven't gone through the entire film, but at least the early returns, one of the questions I had with the Falcons offensive line was, with the injury to Caleb McGarry and the drop-off in the run game, would you get an uptick from some of the other players to kind of make up that loss, right? And one of those players that I had circled was Matthew Bergeron. And I thought through the first month of the season, we didn't really see a significant improvement from Bergeron. But I think from what I've seen going back through the film in this Buffalo game, this was probably his best game as a run blocker. I think you saw a number of times where he was able to get to the second level, take out some of those linebackers, and that was a big contributing factor to some of those explosive runs that the Falcons were able to have in this game with Bijan and Tyler Algier. And that, to me, was something that Bergeron always kind of struggled with, given the outside zone nature of this run game. And you kind of need your guards and your interior offensive linemen to be able to take out those linebackers to create those cutback lanes. And that was something that Bergeron, to me, in the first 2 years that he's been in Atlanta, has been very up and down, inconsistent at executing. And I thought this Bills game was one of the better games he's had, so far in his career. And there's always like one or two games that Bergeron has where you see that high-level run blocking ability that he showed consistently in college, but you just don't get that consistently throughout the season. And hopefully this is not going to be a one-off for him, and this is just only the start of what we can expect from him on a week-to-week basis. And if that is the case, then I think he'll really start to live up to some of the expectations of being not just a solid, capable guard that I think he has been at points up to this point, but potentially one of the better guards in the NFL, and potentially giving the Falcons, that one of those top guard duos that they were getting a lot of hype of going into the season. Like, oh, the Falcons have one of the best guard duos, and for me at least, it was like Chris Lindstrom's doing like 90% of the heavy lifting when it comes to and so, like, to me, if we can get it to a point where maybe it's like 60% Chris Lindstrom and the other 40% Matthew Bergeron, that to me is really where you want to be from an offensive line standpoint. I think you got to see some of that against the Bills, and I think that was a big part of why they were able to sort of control this game offensively in the ways that they did, particularly in the first half.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think one of the contributing factors, Liam, I'll pass this one over to you, is also Zach Robinson standing on the sideline now. So that's a couple of games on the bounce since he's moved down. We're looking a little bit fresher. On a serious note, it does look much improved, and the time management seemed to have improved against the Bills as well. Have you had any thoughts on the offensive coaching aspects of anything over the last couple of weeks in the absence of the bye week?
I mean, I think Zach Robinson coming down to the field is the only factor that matters. I think everything positive is all to do with that. I can't see any other explanation for any of it, really. Like, what a move, what a stroke of genius.
Unbelievable. We'll take that as your full summary. Job done for me. Jackson in the comments saying 100% telling Jarvis Davis he has moved to number 3 Falcons podcaster. I don't know what we've just started with those comments. Please take them with a pinch of salt, everyone. Of course, it's a game of 2 sides. Well, actually, it's a game of 3 sides, but this game very much could not have been won without the defense. 4 sacks, 4 third and outs, which is the most the Bills have had. The most they'd had up until that point was 2 all season. We looked pretty sharp. A couple of interceptions. Does anyone stand out to you, Aaron, more than others, even though it was a round picture?
No, I think that was the thing that was really impressive about this performance. It wasn't, at least based off of what I've seen, and again, I haven't finished watching the all 22, but it didn't feel like there was one standout player like we have seen in previous games when this defense has played really well. And it's like, like going back, I think in the Washington game, if my memory serves, it was kind of like Caden Ellis was kind of the guy that was all over the field making plays. And like, to me, it was much more of a team effort, and you saw, everybody kind of contributing to the whole. And as you said, like, they were able to really disrupt Josh Allen. And that, to me, that was kind of the big question I had for this defense, is like, what are you going to look like against a real quarterback? We saw in that week 1 game, the defense for the most part played well, but Baker Mayfield was able to hit some big time throws that really sort of hurt them, and with the difference in the Bucs, coming out of that game with a win. And there was a couple of plays early in the game where, like, Josh Allen was kind of doing stuff like that. Like, there was that one play where he kind of dropped it in the bucket to Khalil Shakir, and he was out of bounds, and I was like, you can't stop throws like that when you're just going to throw off your back foot with Caden Ellis hitting you in the face, and you're dropping it in the bucket 25 yards down the field. But fortunately, that wound up being incomplete. But like, outside of a handful of those types of plays where Josh Allen just shows why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the Falcons, I thought, did an excellent job, making him uncomfortable with the pressure, with the blitzes, really getting after him, containing him as a scrambler. That was my big concern, because we had seen this defense really struggle to deal with scrambling quarterbacks that are far less talented from a physical standpoint and athletic standpoint than Josh Allen was. And that, to me, was the most impressive thing, because it wasn't just like, Divine Diablo's, spying him in the middle. That was part of it. But, a lot of it was just a much more disciplined rush, guys, sort of doing their job when it comes to that. And that, to me, is, great team defense from this team. So it was very impressive to see this team go up against one of the best quarterbacks in the league and make him look like he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, which is something that we really haven't said about a Falcons defense in pretty much forever.
a long while. We always seem to have one side of the ball doing pretty sharp, and then the other just doesn't quite make the mark. Liam, I know you said you loved the play where Alan got slammed 3 times at once.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you picked out that Aaron may not have mentioned in that then?
No. I think what I like about the current defense is that, it's, when we look, apart from sort of Divine Diablo, who's been consistently good throughout the entire season, every week a different player sort of popping up as a bit of a star in that on that day, and it's great to have sort of those different options and different names. When one player maybe has a bit of a down day, like another name stepping up, and it's not always your sort of likely candidates, and that's what I really like about the current defense. Like obviously, like Alford was our best sort of graded defensive player in this game. Obviously, if you get an interception and a sack, and overall he was very good. Zach Harrison again was really good. Onyemata, who's had a couple of questionable games so far this season, had a really good and effective game. And I think that's where we're sort of changing the narrative a little bit, where we've got that depth on the defense. We're not sort of reliant on a few players, especially on the defensive line front. We've got that rotation now. Obviously, we invested heavily in the draft to get that, and in free agency as well. And I think we're sort of reaping the benefits of having those rotational options throughout the game, where we can bring pressure on a consistent basis. And I think that's what we're doing this season. We said our sort of keys to victory were obviously stopping the run, which I think we did pretty effectively. And obviously James Cook did get some decent yardage, but he wasn't explosive like he has been in previous games, where he sort of ran all over teams. We limited to under 100 yards until he got in the 70s. And then we pressured Josh Allen, and we sort of said, didn't we, like the key was obviously maybe stopping his runs on third down, which we did at a decent rate, and then also sort of forcing him to throw the ball. And obviously, he's a very good thrower of the ball. He's a great quarterback, and he's going to be very good for a lot of it. But his weakness sometimes he does tend to swing it a little bit when he's under pressure, and maybe forces some interceptions out of him, which he hasn't been. I think he only threw 1 before this game, and he threw 2 in this game. So getting that pressure on him was a really good play. I liked how much we stacked the box a lot and just relied on our secondary to cover for enough time, so we could we could get to him with using secondary in the pass rush and blitzes, using the linebackers, and just bringing different looks all game. And I think we startled the Bills a little bit, and Josh Allen, I just think they didn't really have sort of a plan B for us after their plan A sort of went south.
Yeah, very, very much so. One I'll drop to both of you, but of course, Aaron, I'll lead with you first. Liam, it is going to touch on your rookie watch segment later on, so we'll circle back to this as well. However, Ben has asked, what do you guys make of Jalen Walker and James Pierce so far? Aaron, feel free to take the floor.
Yeah, I thought Jalen Walker played really well last night. I thought he was very disruptive as a rusher. I thought James Pierce had a couple of moments in this game so far, going through the film. And I think overall, when you look at what those guys have been, there was a lot of hype at a certain point during the summer where it was like, oh, we have Javon Curse and Micah Parsons on our team. And I was kind of like, I don't know if we have that level of instant impact. These guys are going to combine for 28 sacks or whatever those guys wound up doing in their rookie seasons respectively, types of playmakers. But you're seeing 2 guys that are, I think, contributing. Pierce is, I think, leading the team in terms of pressures that might have flipped after last night's game. I haven't checked the stats or whatever, but you're seeing a guy that has consistently been able to take advantage of, particularly in those first 2 games, of the lesser offensive tackles, which is not meant to be a dig, but that's kind of the starting point for a young pass rusher, because typically you're not going to be able to fare as well against the high quality tackles that have been established in the league. And when you go back to Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley's rookie seasons, like that was who they were beating as well. And then, they did not build on that in future
Yeah.
years. But, we're hoping
That was very
James,
polite. That was very political.
we're hoping that James Pierce will be able to do that as the time wears on. So I think he's at a point in his career. He's on track is basically where I'm at, where I think he's on track to be a good player. Obviously, time will tell on how high that ceiling is, if he can reach the heights that some of the hype had for him. But I think he's on track and being a solid contributor and part of this pass rush rotation. And then Jalen Walker, relatively speaking, has been quiet through the first month as a pass rusher. He had that really good sack in the Vikings game, but outside of that, like not a whole lot of like sort of signature wins. And I think you saw, progress for him last night against the Bills, and hopefully that will be kind of the norm for him. And his secret sauce, I think, is not necessarily just going to be, he's going to line up as an edge rusher and rush purely off the edge. You've seen the Falcons trying to get him inside, use him on some of those simulated pressure looks where they'll drop him into coverage and bring Divine Diablo or Caden Ellis as a way to sort of confuse offensive lines, using him as a chess piece as well as using him on some of those interior rushes through the A or B gap and whatnot. And so I think that's really where the strength of Jalen Walker is going to be, is kind of that versatile piece that you can kind of move all around the formation and try to create one-on-ones for other players. And I think you saw some of that last night. And so, again, he's another player that I do think is on track to be, a valuable contributor. Again, obviously, time is going to tell if they reach the sort of double-digit sack potential that I think we all are desperate and hungry for the Falcons to have again on this team that has been sorely missing for the last decade plus here in Atlanta. But I think both of those guys are living up to at least my expectations. Maybe not the Micah Parsons expectations that other people put out there, but I think they are definitely on track to be solid contributors. And then time will ultimately tell, how big those contributions are going to be long term.
Absolutely. I think just on the back of your comment about the double-digit sacks, we actually all had a little hot take show before the season started, and Cal's take was that somebody this season is going to get double-digit sacks. We're a little while off that yet, to be completely honest, but it's not impossible. You never know. You just need one big game. Just jump to the comments again really fast. Thomas saying, in relation to what you were both discussing earlier, I agree 100% on being able to contain Josh Allen to stop him scrambling. It's good to see the improvement there, as that is what we didn't do well against Mayfield week 1, which is absolutely spot on. You can see the progress already. And this is the only thing that sometimes I don't like about not playing starters in the preseason games, because I think the Falcons have a little bit of a tendency to come into the start of seasons a little bit rusty, even though Raheem argues that we take just as many snaps and things like that. And of course, we have the joint training camps. And just one of those wins nice and early in the season to get us off on the right foot. I'll pass this one to you to start with, Liam, but Aaron, of course, feel free to jump in afterwards. Should we be worried about Jesse Bates? I don't want to bring the tone of the show down too much before we call it a day, but it's a fair comment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not really sure what there is to be worried about. He might not be sort of getting sort of like the interception numbers maybe that he was sort of having at this point last season, but he's doing a very good job in the role that he's doing. Like I did sort of look at his stats. He's not missed a single tackle yet this season. So he's made every single tackle that we've asked him to do. Obviously, we've got sort of a few different options in terms of the ball hawk style secondary now. Obviously, like Watts is sort of similar in that role. And I think I certainly don't have any concerns. He's maybe not sort of like shining as much as he did last season, but I don't think that is because of a significant drop for him. I think that's because there's other players to talk about now. Whereas last season, it's sort of been kind of like Caden Ellis and Jesse Bates, and there's not been that many others to talk about on the defensive side of the ball. But now we've got quite a few different options. I think Jesse Bates is sort of just going a little bit more under the radar, but I don't think it's actually a drop off in any way. I'm pretty sure that he will be still starting for every other team in the NFL. So there's certainly no concerns for me at all.
I'd be inclined to agree. I think not having your name mentioned as much, but not being in negative headlines, just indicates that the team is more well-rounded than it has been historically. Like you said, his partner over the last couple of years has changed a little bit. He had Simmons at one point, and then, of course, there was a bit of a period where we're a little bit uncertain about that, and Watts has stepped in and looks like a starter, the starter that he is, to be completely fair. Aaron, you of the same thinking, or?
Yeah. I have no concerns about Jesse Bates. Famously or infamously, I've said on Locked On Falcons, I do not believe in monogamy, and that comes from Jesse Bates. He is a cheater, and sometimes cheaters don't prosper. But I think going back and watching the game, that first big explosive play, to me, watching the film, that was more on Xavier Watts than it was Jesse Bates. Now, you could say he got burned on that touchdown to Dawson Knox that ended that drive, where he tried to read Josh Allen's eyes, and Josh Allen burned him. But when I think back over the last 3 years, his propensity to sort of cheat, to me, it's only really burned the Falcons maybe like 3 times over that period of time. Like, it happened in the Washington game last year against Jaden Daniels. It happened in week 1 against Baker Mayfield, and it happened in Buffalo against Josh Allen. And the thing that those 3 games have in common is the opposing team has a really good quarterback playing on the opposite side of the field. And sometimes, you're trying to cheat to get yourself an edge. You live by the sword. You kind of die by the sword on a couple of plays. And so I feel like, because you don't have this sort of splash plays like the interceptions that Xavier Watts and other players in the Falcons secondary have, I think that leads to a much more negative perception of Jesse Bates's play. And you see a handful of those explosive plays and touchdowns given up where he has been sort of out of position trying to make a play. But for me, I'm just one of those things where it's like, look, this is what Jesse Bates is. To me, like, if he's going to cheat, he's been doing this for several years. It has been very successful for the Falcons. Sometimes it's not going to be successful, but to me, it's really on the other 10 guys to make it work, in my humble opinion. And I think the other thing that is very underrated about Jesse Bates' season, because of the increase in man coverage that the Falcons have played, he's been asked to cover a lot more wide receivers and tight ends this year, and he has quietly done that as well as pretty much anybody in the secondary, when you don't really see instances of him getting beat in man coverage like that. And so I do feel like, that element is being underrated because, again, I think the focus always is on, particularly when it comes to players in the secondary, because you don't really know what's going on when you're watching the television copy. So much of it is based off of, did you get an interception? Did you break her at the pass? And if you didn't do that, then something bad happened. And it's like, 99% of the time, you don't really see what guys in the secondary are really doing. And oftentimes they're doing their job, but you only see either the high level plays where they give up a touchdown or the high level plays where they get an interception. And there's a lot of plays in between those two sort of endpoints that just go under the radar. And I feel like that's where Jesse Bates is underrated. But yes, he has been burned a couple of times. I think eventually, he will burn other teams in the coming weeks. So I say, Jesse, keep doing what you're doing. And it's up to the other 10 guys to kind of figure out and work around it and make it work.
Perfect. Before we relieve you of your duties, just a little quick moment on the game coming up next week. Of course, we have the 49ers. The Panthers have the Jets. They're right on our tails at the moment. The Bucs are, of course, away against the Lions, I think. So that's 3 pretty big games all in one weekend. I'm not going to mention the Aints because that's not a problem right now. I'm sitting at 1-5. How are you feeling about I know it's early to say it, but our playoff chances going forwards with the kind of fixtures coming up for each team?
Well, coming off of this win, it feels as great as they've ever been, right? And so ultimately, there's still a lot of football left to be played, 12 more games left of the season. Falcons are probably going to have to win at least 7 of those games to really put themselves in a position, whether it's winning the division or winning a wild card spot this upcoming season. So a lot of football left to be played. So right now you feel pretty good about if they can beat the Buffalo Bills, which is arguably the best team on their schedule, then they should be able to beat at least 7 more teams this upcoming season. So you feel pretty good about that, but we know it's the Falcons, so you can never trust to hold a lead at this stage. So to me, like, I think that question, as they stack wins and whatnot, becomes an answer. Like this upcoming week against the 49ers, you have a short week, you have a road game, you have a very impressive emotional win at home. you go on the road against a quote unquote lesser opponent that's dealing with injuries and all that stuff. You know, these are all the classic trappings of a trap game, right?
Yeah.
For the Atlanta Falcons, we had a similar situation going from the Vikings win to the Panthers game the following week, and so the question to me in terms of feeling good about the Falcons' playoff chances, you know, you feel even better if they can avoid falling into that trap against San Francisco, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the cleanest, most impressive win. You just kind of have to leave the Bay Area with a W, and if you do that, that's the kind of resiliency that you really need to do and show over the course of a season, that you can, you know, deal with the peaks and the valleys for this football team that makes you a playoff team, that sort of resilience that playoff teams typically have. And so that to me is going to be the most immediate challenge. And so, you know, you feel great about the team's playoff chances theoretically based off of this most recent win. You'll feel even better if they can avoid falling into that trap against the 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we've discussed so much on this show, just in terms of stringing wins together. We seem to have a tendency of getting a big win like this and then buckling like that in terms of trap games, but also just in terms of not having the momentum, which is exactly what Electrify's just said. We need to keep the momentum from last night going into next week. If we play like this every week, the mental factor will be huge, as well as getting the results on the field. And that is a huge part of it. We've not been the most resilient team mentally over the last 7-8 years, give or take. So, and just a little snippet for you, Aaron. This is only my 7th year as a Falcons fan. So I'm yet to see a winning season. I'm yet to see playoff football, and I've seen far too many head coaches for a 7-year period. So if this year we don't have a winning season, I'm going to have to revoke my membership for the sake of you lot, because you need winning football again, and I'm clearly the jinx at this point. So I'm going to take a step back.
I thought I was the problem because I became the solo host of Locked On Falcons in 2017, and then I was like, "Oh, everything's looking good, everything's looking up," and then we haven't been a playoff team since then. And I was thinking it was me, but clearly it was you. So yeah,
there we go. I wish I knew I had somebody else to blame throughout all this. I would have been much lighter on myself. But on that note, Aaron, we will relieve you of your duties. It seems almost backwards to allow you to plug, but would you like to plug your channels and where you are and everything like that to maybe the one English watcher that doesn't know who you are?
Appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys are interested in hearing more snarky comments about the Atlanta Falcons, then go check out Locked On Falcons, 5 shows daily on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And so that's where you can find my stuff.
Love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your insight, of course, and hopefully we'll link up again soon. But first, let's get that win against the 49ers, and then we can discuss that.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Boom. What a man. What a man.
That's good. Oh, good to have him on.
I know. Not too much left to cover. We'll just do the few little bits. I didn't want to kibosh your segment if you've got a rookie watch available to hand.
Yeah, I mean, I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll do a tiny little whip around of the league, because I've got a few little talking points.
Yeah.
But after that, we will call it a night, which is why I didn't want to keep Aaron in for the boring parts of, not the boring part as in your part, but the whip around of the league.
Well, yeah.
The show.
Get that, get the insight.
For anyone and everyone that is still with us, Cal is currently in Latvia watching England play as we speak, actually. And Mark is over in, is he in Ibiza? Yeah,
Ibiza, yeah.
So, one, they weren't in the right country to do a show tonight, and 2, they're probably not in the right condition to do a show tonight either. So, me and Liam got Aaron on, of course, brilliant guest. So, we're going to move on to Liam's segment, do a little whip around of the league, and we will call it a night. Anyone that's watched the show before, you'll know what's coming up. If you've not watched the show before, I apologize for this clip. I made it in as a joke, and now it's stuck to the show. So here we go. Roll the clip, and the show is yours, Liam. Oh no, you froze. There we go.
I froze. Have you run it?
Yeah,
I didn't see the clip. Oh, maybe. Okay, well, we'll go for it anyway. So, yeah, rookie watch. We've got obviously some of our rookies to talk about this week since we were back on the scene playing. And I think we've had a good win against a big team, and with us playing that many rookies in one game, we kind of have to have good performances from our rookies to win games this season, because we've got 4 or 5 of them sometimes on the field at one time. So we're kind of relying on them having good games, and I think they all had a very sort of solid performance in the main. Obviously, we just spoke about Pearson and Walker. They're contributing. I think they've only got sort of 1 sack each so far, and I think people may look at that and think that's kind of like a bit of a down side, and it's quite.
You can argue that case, but the expectations are only set by the fans, not by the team itself.
Yeah, and we're bringing sort of like pressure from different angles this year, and we've got sort of sacks sort of spread across the defensive line and the secondary. So I'm not too concerned about individual numbers, because we're not really a team that has got that premier pass rusher yet that we can sort of rely on to get those numbers. We're kind of doing it with sort of scheme rather than personnel, which is not a negative thing at all. I think that obviously Zoe Watt sort of tends to be mentioned every single week of being doing something like maybe not always that good. I think he's obviously kind of learning on the fly a little bit. Like he is sort of like making a few mistakes, or but I feel like that's kind of, he's been thrown in the deep end, doesn't he, in terms of our sort of secondary in that safety position. But I think overall he's shining more than he's suffering. So I'm quite happy with where he's at as a player. I think they're all contributing in a way that like Aaron said, like that they're on track to be what we kind of expect of a rookie. Like I think a lot of people sort of expect rookies, especially first round picks, to be explosive from the get go, and that is rare nowadays, especially like on the defensive side of the ball. Like the step up in class for as a pass rusher from college to the NFL is like potentially the outside of the quarterback, potentially the biggest step up. But because I think you just like a lot of the sort of like college tackles and guards, like there's some obviously great ones out there, but ultimately you don't come across that many top talents throughout the season, and in the end you're coming up against a good tackle every single season. Like, I know there's some weak ones out there, but they'd all be very high level college players. Like the low level NFL players are high level college players. And
I think the sheer size difference of some players as they've settled into the league for 2 or 3 years changes pretty drastically as well. It
does, and I think a lot of people will go straight to the athleticism of a defensive end. Like James Pierce, obviously very very quick and very nimble. There's a lot of Jen Walker's got a lot of size, and you kind of come in expecting that you can rely upon that a lot in college. You can just rely upon that physical and athleticism side of your game to get you sort of the numbers and be effective. When you come to the NFL, you've got that, but you need to add those hand movements and techniques to your game. Otherwise, you're not going to beat like these NFL tackles with just pure sort of strength or speed. You're going to have some like some hand movements and something about you to be effective, and that takes coaching. It takes a lot of coaching. It takes a lot of time to become effective, and I think once you add that to the game, I think we've got some good rookies on that defensive side of the ball. So I think overall, I'm happy where everybody's at. I don't think anybody's looking bad in any way. I think everybody's sort of looking on track to be what I would expect a rookie to be.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't disagree. Nobody's like we've discussed in previous weeks. We've had seasons where no Falcons rookies have even touched the field really, or had any impact. So the fact that we have 3 to 4 like dead starters pretty much already, and then one's contributing from the out. I think I'm probably being playing it down a little bit there as well. But the fact that we even have that many in the mix is very impressive. And of course, the absence of Billy Bowman Jr. as well, which is another player that's right in that mix when he's healthy. So
it's
Good to see.
Very happy. And then, for sort of my rookie of the week, sadly I've not been able to pick one of our players again. Did not quite got to that level yet that I can pick them. I think it's going to happen this season. I do think there'll be a moment where it happens. So the player that I've sort of looked at this week really is maybe actually didn't probably have his best week of the season this week, but actually it was still a very good performance, and the rest of his performances have been excellent. And I've sort of saved this one for Mark's absence because he's an Alabama player, and it's just bias that I'm picking him. So I know that's exactly what he'd be saying right now as soon as I said his name. It's actually a very interesting one because it was a player that we spoke about sort of whether we would take him in the draft. He was one of our, in terms of our group podcast, it was somebody that we spoke about quite a lot. That's Jihad Campbell, who's at the Eagles. Like, he has been, like, when you look at his stats and his grades, he has been fantastic in the Eagles team that has stuttered a little bit this season compared to previous seasons.
I'd agree.
He's been so effective. Like, when you look at his gradings, he's literally like, he's green. He's like a cucumber sandwich on my on my ratings. Like, just pure health. Like, without the bread, that's like just cucumber. He's been really good, and he's great for me as an Alabama forward to see him performing at a high level straight away in the NFL. And he's had 6 very strong weeks for the Eagles, and people will say, well, why don't we pick him? But I think I'm not worried about sort of anything. No. He doesn't do any sort of like pass rushing really. He's sort of more of an off the ball linebacker, and he's been playing in coverage and making a lot of tackles. But he's my pick of the week. He's a great player, really fun to watch. He's one of them players who puts himself about, always busy. I'm excited to sort of see where his career goes, really.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, especially as a Bama boy, like, it's hard not to follow that trajectory and path, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely excellent. It's been,
love that.
And
that was
Rookie Watch
for the week.
Really? Oh god.
In terms of our other segments, unfortunately, as Mark is in a B30, he was going to try his best to submit a fraud watch, but he's not had the opportunity because he's been, I can only assume he's on the drink for everybody watching. So, of course, he's probably not in a condition to do a fraud watch. He did, however, mention a name, but I won't spoil it because I think he's just going to double up next week. So we will have 2 new inductees to the fraud watch roster next week. So that matchup's gonna look pretty good come the end of the season when the rookie watch roster faces the fraud watch roster. Just before we call it a night, tiny whip around the league. Zen in the comments on the back of your rookie watch.
Yeah, he was.
Also, like to give a shout out to Cam Scatterboot for the.
He was my other option. I think
it's almost like a given at that point. This one, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be somebody I can pick
because he's that good.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be somebody I can. Probably I think he might be making the rookie roster this season with the way he's playing. I do think
he might make a post-season roster at this rate.
Yeah, you never know.
He's looking sharp. Just a few really quick results that I wanted to run through. Don't really have too much of a comment as such, more just baffling confusion. The first of which being the Panthers beating the Cowboys with a field goal with 3 seconds left on the clock or something disgusting. Don't know how that happened. The Panthers are the most chaotic team that I've seen in years. There is teams much worse than them, and there is teams much better, but no one is better at just changing which team comes out every single week than they are. Like, we were poor when they beat us 30-0, and that was on us, but they still won, so it's irrelevant. but then they go the week after and get spanked, and then they go and beat a Cowboys team that actually are performing much better than I thought they would in the absence of like CD and players like that have been off the game. So I don't know what's going on there, and I don't like the fact that even though we're 3-2 because we're a game behind them, that they're on the same wins as us. Like, it's not filling me with confidence this early in the season. Of course, the Saints, don't need to discuss them. They got beat again. That's all. That's all fun and games. That's 1-5. They're not going to be a problem this season now. I think they're down and out very much so. Poor Spencer Rattler and co. He was dropped in a little bit of a predicament, that lad. But then the one that's coming out of frustration is the fact that the Bucs just always find a way to win. At no point were the 49ers ever really on top as such, even though they were very, very briefly technically on top.
Yeah.
They just look like a really, really comfortable team. And this is in the absence of some top players as well. You could argue they're missing wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 and running back 1. And Baker Mayfield is still getting the job done. And that is, as a rival or not, that is some resurrection of a career over the last few years, because people's arguments when I've said Bijan's the best player in the league at the moment, the argument is always no, Baker Mayfield is the best player in the league at the moment. And it's a fair argument. I'm finding it hard to, there's not another quarterback that's doing what he's doing with the tools that they've got that are equivalent, if that makes sense. Like, he's got a really lower standard team than everyone else that's performing at his level. So disgusting to see. Hate to see it. But that was my two-piece. NFC South is crazy. I thought we were gonna have a bit more of a free run this year, and it'd just be us and the Bucs. But apparently not. Apparently the Panthers want to show up every 2 weeks. So no idea. Have you got anything from around the league before we wrap it?
I mean, I think like overall, there's no sort of surprises outside of just how bad some of the team, like how bad the Jets look.
The Jets are awful
right now. I just don't understand. Like, obviously they've been bad for a long time, and they've had a lot of picks, and they're going through personnel, and they just don't get any better. And it must just be so painful to be a Jets fan that they just, no matter what they seem to do, they just do not seem to improve in any significant way.
No. It's horrible because I can't even see where the win's coming from, because they play the Panthers next, and at the start of the season, if you asked me that, I would have been like, oh, it's a pretty 50-50 game. And even this version of the Panthers shouldn't struggle against the Jets.
You wouldn't think so.
And then they've got the Bengals, who are really, really down and out, but even a down and out Bengals, I don't think are that bad. And then they've got the Browns, who are, again, a really struggling team at the moment. But again, I don't think they're that bad either. Actually, I say the Browns are really bad. They're up and down as well, to be fair to them. That was probably a little bit harsh. But yeah, weird team, really weird team. Feel awful for Mr. Fields, because I don't even mind him.
No, it was, I mean, the fact that like Fields went for negative 10 yards.
Yeah. was it
come out of the game with negative 10 yards?
Yeah, was it
never
you that posted that in the chat?
Yeah,
that said Fields has gone for negative 10 yards, which means you sat on your sofa have more yards than Fields.
I'm just like, it's just absolutely abysmal. Like all round.
Yeah.
Way. And you don't like, they've put a lot of like time and money into the O-line, and they've got a good running back. They've got a very good wide receiver 1. But they're just terrible.
They are. It's just not working, is it?
No. Something's fundamentally wrong there.
They decided to get rid of Mr. Salah last year, so
yeah.
You never know. I don't think there was any more that completely blew my mind, other than the fact that this season the league feels awfully unpredictable. Like just overall, it's really hard to judge. I won't break it down, but again, the Colts beating the Cardinals. Pre-season, you would have said the Cardinals would have pretty steadily had that. I think Colts look brilliant. Steelers, I know it was only the Browns, but 23-9, they look like they could go all the way in theory and on paper. Obviously, Mr. Tomlinson will want to do something about that because they've had about 20 consecutive winning seasons, haven't they? Not really done much else from it. And then KC getting back to winning ways as well, which is crazy. Against the Lions of all
against the Lions,
Super Bowl favourites, or may even be the Super Bowl favourites. I don't check the odds.
And they've obviously got Rice coming back off his ban the next game, which you'd expect. He's technically their wide receiver one possibly. So that gives them another weapon. So it wouldn't be a huge shock to see them go on a bit of a run again.
No. I still think the dynasty's over, but I never said that they're not a good team, if that makes sense. Like, I think the dynasty's over in terms of that almost guarantee that they're going to get to the championship game every single year has gone. But it doesn't mean they won't. It just means it's more of a stretch for them because they were breezing it in previous seasons.
I think it's certainly more of a battle. I just the Andy Reid and Mahomes combination, I would just never did back against them doing it. Just you've got a special coach and a special quarterback, you can go places. I hope, and as just a general NFL fan, I want to see something different.
I agree.
In those games.
Even if we're not at the stage where we can be in the Super Bowls and the championship games and stuff, just spice it up. Like
something different. Let's have two different teams.
Sick of the Chiefs, sick of the
Eagles,
I'll let off the Bills and Lions because they've been almost there but never really cemented the place yet. I thought the Ravens would be the next on. There we go. There's another one. The Ravens.
There's another one.
The Ravens would be next to take that mantle, but they're
completely. I mean, they've been unlucky, haven't they, with their injuries? But they've just had a huge, massive drop off. It's that kind of season.
It is crazy, and that's why we love this sport, even though it stresses us out. But waking up this morning to a win against arguably a Super Bowl contender for the season was not a bad Tuesday morning at all. So we take that. And on to the 49ers next week, who, of course, a couple of injuries to the name. Are they 4-2 at the moment still?
Yes, they will be, won't they?
Still in stature, but definitely beatable. A couple of blueprints to work off. So let's see how it comes out.
Losing Fred Warner. I mean, I don't never want a player to be injured, but obviously losing Fred Warner, I think, for the season. I think
sounds like it.
He's the best linebacker in the whole football. So you don't replace a player of that quality. So that's an absolutely massive loss for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, never want somebody to be injured.
No,
but unfortunately, he already is. So he is. So
we definitely benefit.
100%. I'm gonna go for a Falcons win. I'm not going to drop a score line, but I think we're going to find some momentum. It's been a long while since we've put a string together, so I think.
I think so. I think we can win that game. I would have been, so the 49ers looked like pretty solid, but like in this game just gone, they didn't. They kind of look like they've been found out a little bit, and the injury. I think the injury is just catching up with them, and that happens sometimes, and I think that might tip. Like obviously we've also lost him, and now we've lost Warner, the two best players on defense. Obviously, their quarterback's been out. Obviously, McCaffrey's not playing at a level that he's played at in the past. Like it's a team sort of maybe trending downwards a little bit. So I think we can topple them.
Yeah. It's nice when we're both positive.
It is,
I love that. It's a nice change. It's actually been a very positive season overall so far by the show standards. We've had some nightmares over the years. But on that note, we will wrap up the show for tonight. So as always, thank you to my. Why do I always do that wrong? I cannot understand screen mirroring. Co-host over here, Liam. Like I said earlier, Mark and Liam Mark and Cal. Oh my God. The show is bedtime straight after this. Cal and Mark couldn't make it because they were abroad. So if you're just joining the show now, we had Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons on for 45 minutes at the start of the show. So make sure you go back and watch that because there's some stunning insight, analysis, and some cheeky little takes as well, where we were also labelled the second best Falcons podcast out there. It might have been self-labelled, but it was labelled nonetheless. I'm not going to do a sign-off like, but if you've enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe. Drop us a follow on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts if that's where you're catching this. And, of course, you can catch us on all social media. And on that note, we will leave you to it. I will show off my stunning Falcons chain to celebrate Victory Tuesday, and we will catch you next week.